Abduldayan is here. Please, can you share your slides or screen with us and start your presentation? Thank you very much. Dr. Abduldayan, please.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for another interesting session organized by the University Library Services, Federal University of Technology, Minna. I'll be sharing my screen quickly. Okay, can we all see my screen?
Yes, I can see. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, beautiful. So my name is Fatimah Jibril Abduldayan. I'm a lecturer from the Department of Library and Information Science, Federal University of Technology, Minna. And I'm also an RDM advocate. And the title of my interaction, because it's going to be more of interaction with all of us this morning, is Research Data Management and Ethics, Introduction, Best Practices and Tools. Okay, so this is my presentation outline. I'll give a brief introduction. I will look at what research data means, and then why do we have to manage research data? Then we look at ethics in research data management. And then we talk about open science and its intersection with RDM, research data management tools, and we conclude. Now, we all know that the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. And that's why you hear this common saying that data is the new oil. Gone are the days when the whole world is rallying around making lots of money, profit, and developing nations are leveraging oil. That's for countries that have oil or other natural resources. But in the past years, we've now seen that knowledge economy is what we have now, and knowledge economy is heavily driven with data, not just any data, but reliable data. And so we have this caption here saying that the world's most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. Now, but before data you can make data to be the new oil, that data needs to be found. You need to make it accessible. We need to be able to extract data, refine it, do some form of analysis and processing. People should be able to have access to such findings after analyzing it through distribution in whatever means you want to leverage. And then we should be able to monetize it so that we get not just social benefits, but economic benefits that can help develop our country. Now, for we researchers, we see research data as our new oil, right? Because in the academia, we conduct a lot of research and then we churn out lots of data, irrespective of your discipline, whether in pure sciences and social sciences, biological, engineering, architecture. We all have that common thing, a common research process, and this research process is driven with lots of data that is being generated. So for us, research data is our new oil, and then that means we need to be able to carefully manage it so that people can find it, they can extract, and then refine it, distribute it, and we can use it to better our society by improving our economic development. Now, what is research data? Research data simply is any material that can help support your research findings. And I have some definitions from literature here, summarized here, that research data is any information that is collected, observed, generated, or created to validate or even revalidate your findings, research findings. Research data is also any evidence or information that is gathered through systematic investigation or experiment to support or refute hypotheses or to help answer a research question. So this definition is important so that we know that data, when you talk of research data, is not anyhow data, right? But then it is data that is carefully gathered through systematic investigation or even through experiment. And that data can be used to support or refute hypotheses or to answer a research question. Research data can be both primary, secondary data, and can also be in various formats, either in numerical formats, textual, audiovisual, or even visual format. And research data can be born digital. When you say data is born digital, that means it's generated digitally. For instance, through the use of questionnaire, your interview, all these things are born digital or non-digital. For those of us that are like agricultural scientists that do a lot of field work, you know, the farmland, for instance, where they get outputs, where they try to plant and then monitor their seeds until it germinates. That process churn out data, but that's kind of data, it's non-digital. But this kind of non-digital, some of them comes in form of pictures, can be in form of specimen. They could also be digitized so that they can be carefully kept and made permanently available for future research. Now, there are different kinds of research data. You have the ones you get through questionnaire, interview, focus group discussions, especially for those of us in social sciences. We do a lot of questionnaire where you ask people their opinions or something, and then they give you their responses in form of answers to your questionnaire, your interview sessions. For those in chemistry, for instance, chemical engineering, they do a lot of laboratory experiment. So research data for them would be in form of laboratory notebooks, field notebooks, diaries. Okay, then other forms of data are like transcripts, code books. Computer scientists, they churn out, they do a lot of coding. And then you have audio tapes, videotapes, slides, artifacts, specimens, and samples. So I ask a question here, depending on your field of research, what are the types of research data that you generate in your field? You can drop example of such data in the chat box. I want to know the types of data, the kinds of data, how did they come? Your data in your research, your field, your discipline? Are they in the form of questionnaire, like for us in social sciences, or you are a software developer, so your data is in the form of codes, or you are even maybe a photographer, an architecture, so it's more of photographs, films, slides, artifacts. So drop in the chat box. I want to see the different kinds of research data that you churn out. These are other types of research data, algorithms. For those that are doing a lot of AI development and modeling, they do a lot of algorithms, methodology, even standard operating procedures and protocols. They are all research data. Remember, these are materials that can help to support your final findings. When someone needs to repurpose your work or replicate or even verify what you claim to be true, these are the kind of materials that you can make available for people to support your findings and to claim ownership of whatever result comes out of your research. And then we have this question. Why do we have to manage research data? Like, sorry?
Yeah,
there's a crosstalk.
Please go ahead, Dr. Fatimah. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sadia. So I have a question here. Why do we have to manage research data? Why do you think you have to manage this kind of data that is coming out of your research? Remember, I said earlier that data is the new oil, but then Edward Deming is telling us here that without data, you are just another person with an opinion. It means that when you keep talking and claiming something to be right, but then there's no data to support what you're saying, then you are just another person with an opinion. So it means that whatever data you're coming out with in your research, especially for those of us that are on our PhD studies or you're working on a consultancy project that involves lots, extensive research, by the time you come out with your findings and there's no underlying data to support it, then you are just like every other person with an opinion. Aside that, we need to manage our research data for several other reasons. Some of them is one, to help you increase the impact of your research. How? Simply because it helps to maximize the visibility. Your visibility of the data itself, visibility of your institution of affiliation, if you happen to be in the academia like us, and also promoting transparency in research. Remember, it is when you are sure of what you have done, then you'll be more than willing to share your data with people or even to make it available. Of course, based on certain restrictions, if you want it to be, we'll get there. But then managing your research data helps to increase your research impact by maximizing the visibility of the data and promoting transparency in research. Another reason why you have to manage your data is it improves accessibility. And this is achieved by ensuring that the quality and integrity of data is maintained during and beyond the life of your project. Then managing it well also helps you to prevent unauthorized use by addressing privacy and confidentiality, right? And issues through and beyond the research project. Then it also helps to safeguard your data by establishing appropriate storage, backup, and management. And lastly, to ensure compliance. This is very important. Compliance with requirements of your institution, if you have one, and funding agencies, including journal publishers. Now, publishers are requesting that whatever article you want to publish, you should be able to point your readers to where they can get your data. There are times that you read a very interesting article and you wish to replicate, I'm not saying duplicate here, to replicate that kind of study in another geographical location, say in Nigeria, but you will see that you find out that the article itself is not enough. The explanation or the methodology in the article is not properly described to guide replicability of that kind of research. But then when you have access to the underlying data, you have access to the methodology clearly defined and other information that can help replicability, then it makes it easier for other people to repurpose and even to understand what you claim you have. So ensuring compliance means that there are funding agencies, big funding agencies are now requesting that you manage your data effectively because that would be part of their own return on investment. You will need to tell them where they can access that data, you know, as part of the reasons why they give you the grants or even accept your paper for publication. And lastly, AI models feed on data too. Artificial intelligence is everywhere now, and we have questions here and there, people saying it's difficult for them to develop AI systems because there is no data for them to train such systems on. Just this morning, one of my postgraduate students is trying to develop an AI system for a recommendation system for library. But then before you can develop a recommendation system, you must have had data over the years that you could leverage to predict how users will borrow books in the library. But because that kind of data is not available for us in Nigeria, for instance, it's difficult to build a system that would use that data set to train and be able to suggest read a book for readers to use, you see? So that's another reason why we need to start keeping data, especially research data. Now, this is research data life cycle. Now, the life cycle shows how your data moves from the beginning till the end. Just like your research process that you start with is an idea, then your statement of problem, then your literature search, and then your analysis, your conclusion. The same thing happens to your data right from the beginning of your research life cycle. When you're thinking of, oh, I want to do a research, I have a topic, or you have agreed with your supervisor to conduct a particular research, from that moment, you need to start thinking of how you are going to manage your research data. Now, this is the life cycle. This is how it goes. The first thing you do in planning your data management is to write a plan. And that's the first step in the research data life cycle. And in this first step, there are two things you have to remember: the ethics and policy compliance. You see, and this is where ethics comes in. Research ethics involves the application of fundamental ethical principles to research activities and ensuring that there's no harm to anyone that will be participating in your study. So before you begin your study, your research, you need to remember ethics. What are the guidelines? What kind of data are you going to generate? Who will be your participant? Who are going to be like your respondent? Is it going to be a research that's with human privacy? For instance, you're dealing with maybe persons with disability or even people with HIV/AIDS, for instance, that would not want any data to link. I mean, they don't want people to know their status. Or you're even dealing with children Okay, your respondents will be children, maybe underage children and all that. You need to bear in mind the ethics, okay, that would guide that kind of study that you're about to conduct. And interestingly, just very recently, last year, Nigeria now have a National Data Protection Act, and there's a lot of awareness and advocacy for institutions, organizations, private industry to incorporate the ethics into whatever research activities that they are doing. Especially as in Nigeria, our data, there are so many data silos everywhere. You go to bank, they take your data. You go to passport unit, your data is, you get your data, the Federal Road Safety, your data is just everywhere. Now there's a national data protection ethics that tries to safeguard our data so that it doesn't fall into unauthorized hands and no harm will be done to me because you have access to my data. So the same thing applies to research. Before you begin your research, you have to think what is the ethical implication and then the policy compliance. There are institutions that have institutional research ethics policy. I'm sure of the Bayero University, Kano. They have a national ethics policy for research such that you all lecturers, postgraduate students, you have to study and comply with the statements in the policy before you begin your research. And there's usually a unit, there's a governance structure around it to ensure compliance. And then in Minna, what we have is a postgraduate guideline, okay, that tells you what to do, how to cite, how to reference, which is not too detailed, but at least there's a form of guideline, that tells postgraduate students on what to look out for so that you don't conduct research unethically. Then your data management plan can now begin. That's how you hope to generate your data and then manage it. Now, the next step after clearing ethics and complying with the policy is the data collection proper. Now, this presentation is not for data collection tools, but then we all know we need to collect data to help us at least answer our research questions and provide answers to our hypotheses. So now when you're collecting data, as part of your research data lifecycle, you need to remember documentation, proper documentation of the data you're collecting. Remember, that data, you are hoping to make it available for someone to use in future. And then it's something you want to carefully gather because at the end of your research, that collection, the end of your research, you have to make the data set available. Okay, so documentation is very important. How do you want to store it? And then where will it be stored? And then you have a README file, for instance, that will identify when you put X, what is the meaning of X? When it is Y, what does Y means in your study and all that. Then the file format and the naming structure, you also need to consider that. This is a very serious issue. Most of us, we even get confused with files that are stored on our personal computer because we are not using proper naming conventions. If you want to retrieve a document that was downloaded just last week, it's difficult for some of us to download because we are not doing proper naming structure and even the file format. At least at the basic level, you should be able to use your folders properly such that when you need something about your PhD, chapter 1, you know where to go to retrieve the article. And you can also use software, like Mendeley, for instance, Mendeley and a host of other reference management software that helps to arrange your article. So documentation to describe the data you'll be collecting, and then the file format, naming and structure should be carefully gathered and stored. Then managing the data itself. Now you have data, you've collected responses from 5,000 participants across Nigeria. Where do you store this record? Where do you store the data? That's where data storage comes in. There are a lot of storage facilities that you can leverage. Of course, I will not advise that you keep such, leave it on your local system because your system can get stolen. You can't put it on your hard disk. Hard disk can crash at any time, right? But then there are other data storage systems that you can use. An example is the cloud storage system and your institutional repository in your university. Institutional repository is a digital saving platform that universities are using to help curate, store, and make access easy to intellectual content that is coming out of the university. And if you don't have one in your university, there are public data storage systems that you can store your data securely. Your Google Drive is an example. although it's third party and there you have to be careful, but then there are storage systems that you can save your data in, and then you are sure of a permanent accessibility. Then confidentiality as well and security is very important. When you're storing your data, you have to remember to anonymize the content. You have to do a lot of anonymization. There's no data that should be able to point that, okay, this data can lead you to so person in so university. So you have to do a lot of anonymization. And then lastly, in sharing your data, sharing is very important, because if you don't share, then nobody will see what you're doing. So to share data, you need to be aware of copyright and licensing issues. There are different ways of sharing data. You can share your data just like you publish your article. There are open source platforms that helps you to publish your data. And aside publishing articles, you can also publish data and you get the same citation just as you're cited for your article. You can also get cited by sharing your data. So you can publish, you publish and share using different platforms, even through your institutional repositories, or you publish properly, with data publishers. And then copyright and licensing. This is very important. Remember, you got your data from humans, okay, and some of them may not want some parts of that data to be made public. So copyright ensures that you're not infringing on anyone's right. So if you have such kind of aspect in your data, you need to let whoever will help you in sharing the data to know that this part of my data, I don't want it shared this way. I want this part to be shared. And there are also licensing options as well, where you give people different levels of licensing on how they can reuse your data. If you allow them to reuse and even commercialize it, you specify it. If you don't want that, you say. So you can see that this fear of, no, I've worked so hard to get my data, I don't want anybody to have access to it. Copyright and licensing has helped to remove that fear, right? So that means that your data should be as open as possible and then as closed as necessary, depending on how you want it, by invoking the proper copyright and then attaching the right licensing options to it, and then data citation as well, right? So now let's move on to open science and RDM. Dr. Sadia mentioned this at the beginning, that we have openness. People are clamoring for openness. Let this thing be open. Let people have access. Let them see what you're doing. There should be no barrier to knowledge. There should be no form of padlock, no form of firewall. Knowledge should not be caged. And this is the idea behind open science. Open science is a movement that is aimed at making scientific research accessible to everyone, regardless of their level of expertise. And open science simply emphasizes transparency, right? When you are so sure of what you're doing, there is no mago-mago, no mago-mago anywhere, then you should be able to leave it open for others to see what you're doing, right? Because open science emphasizes on transparency, collaboration. When you close it, fine, nobody will see it, but then you make collaboration difficult, and then you're limiting the frontier of knowledge, expanding the knowledge, and then contributing to scientific community. So open science ensures collaboration, and then openness in various aspects of research is highly encouraged, including openness to your data. So openness in research data is what we call open data. There are other aspects of open science, like open access to our journal articles, open peer review, open government, right? Open government, open everything simply means make it accessible, allow collaboration, and ensure transparency. Now, in contributing to openness, right? Our data, research data that you want to drop and allow people to see must comply with the FAIR principles. FAIR principles means findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. Now, findable means your data set, your research data should be stored where people can have access to it. It should be findable. And for it to be findable, that means it should be describable, right? That was why I mentioned earlier about documentation, metadata description. You should be able to describe and identify important parts of your data. For instance, the author's name, your name should be clearly stated. right? Your institution of affiliation, the type of data you're keeping, right? And then if it is data that is time sensitive, if it is location bound, right? All these data should be attached to whatever data you want to make accessible or open. That is for findability. Then accessibility, that where you store your data should be where people can have access to it. For instance, my university, Minna, FUT Minna, we have an institutional repository that is accessible. So this means that whatever lecturers or the scientific community, whatever they deposit in a repository, people can have access to it because the repository is accessible, right? So wherever you're keeping your research data, for you to be able to contribute to open science and show that you've been working for the past 3 years, that facility must be accessible. Then interoperability deals with machines. When you deposit something in a container, that container should be able to interact with other machines, other storage system. People should be able to, machines now should be able to have access to it. And that applies to even institutional repositories. If you drop your material in a repository that other repositories cannot connect to, then it is not interoperable. So wherever you're depositing your data should be interoperable and reusable. Reusable means everything that will help another person, a secondary researcher, to understand and reuse your data, okay, should be added to your data. And all this FAIR principle is simply to facilitate data discovery and reuse for future research. Now, the last thing here is the policy. We all know that policy is a guideline, a set of rules. And this applies to RDM too, research data management policy. They are simply guidelines for handling research data throughout its life cycle. Universities in developed countries are all developing their RDM policies, and they are all saying the same thing. They are describing the same situation of ensuring that research data is made available. It is carefully gathered and made available. So does your university have a RDM policy? Have you even heard of anything research data policy, management policy before? If you have, please drop in the chat box. If you don't have one in your university, there are lots of RDM policies online, that you can go through to see the guidelines on how to manage your research data management. Now, I ask a question here that does your institution own an institutional repository? Like I explained earlier, institutional repository are simply data storage spaces where researchers and academics can deposit data sets, making them more discoverable, reusable, and accessible. So if your institution does not have an institutional repository, take this message back to your library, to your university management, that, okay, now I know the importance of my research data that I've been working on, I've been generating, and I know that my institution can have a repository where I can deposit this data set, right? And there are librarians with RDM skills that can advise and guide you through your RDM activities. Yes, RDM activities may be a lot to process. The RDM activity that I've listed may be so much to process now. You don't have to stress. You can visit your library, and I'm sure you find a librarian with RDM skills. For instance, in my university, FUT Minna library, we have librarians with the required RDM skills that can take you through the management of research data, advise you on what to keep about your research. And then when you come out with your codes, with your data set, and then you don't want to leave it on your laptop, on your system, they will guide you on how to upload such data sets on the institutional repository, and also discuss all RDM tools. Everything is there's always a software for everything. There was a time my daughter was asking that, Mom, is there a software that can guide someone on how to make rice and beans? And I said, yes, there's always a software for everything, right? So this research data management activity, there are software that can help you. They are referred to as the RDM tools. Now, what the software does basically is to guide you on what the important aspects of your research that needs to be properly kept, so that at the end of that research life cycle, when you publish, you get your PhD degree, you conclude that consultancy services you're doing, and then you are done, you should be able to have a data set as a return on investment, something that is the oil that you can now monetize, you can make a lot of money from it, and then people can repurpose it based on how you wish to share. You know, so there are software that can guide you through this process aside speaking to a librarian in your university. So these software are referred to as data management software. They help you in developing data management plan. And I was able to put together some of the open source software, you know, that are open source. Open source means that they are free. You can use them. There is not, you don't have to pay, right? Just go to the website and then they take you through how to use it. An example is the DMP tool, Open Science Framework. They are all open source, but Globus that was developed in 1997 is subscription based. So it means that you need to pay a certain amount of money before you can use it. So I think I still have some time. Let me take you through DMP online. I have the website address here to show you how it works quickly. Right, so this is the website of DMP online, right? And dmponline.dcc.ac.uk, it was developed in the UK by the Digital Curation Center, that is DCC. And then you only need to create an account, and creating accounts is just with your username and your password, right? And then the interesting thing is they pull together data management requirements from different funding agencies like the Horizon 2020, European Research Council, the ERIC, and all these big international funders. Like, remember I said they are now requesting that you manage your data carefully, because you are going to submit how you will manage it. Not even after managing, like you have to tell them how you are going to manage that data when they give you the millions of dollars to conduct a research, right? So this software will guide you on what to keep about your data. And so far, they have about 136,000 users across the world with 340,000 organizations, and they have 153 and 602 data management plans from 89 countries. And how do you use it? Just create an account with your email and password. It is open source.
Abduldayan, yeah. Are you sharing the screen? Someone is saying we're not seeing the screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Can you see the screen now?
What? Okay. Yes.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for drawing my attention to that. All right, so this is the DMP website, the DMP online. Like I explained, it is free, developed by Digital Creation Center of the UK, and it is open source. You only need to create an account, and then you have access to it. And then it's been used currently in about 89 countries. And so far, data management plans submitted by researchers across the world is about 153 data management plans, and private organizations to about 350 organizations, including universities, right? So let me take you through some of the public DMPs, data management plans that have been submitted by researchers, including postgraduate students. You can include postgraduate students. See, this is an interview study of a PhD research project. The student is from Loughborough University. You can see the name of the owner, and then this is the data set. You can open in PDF. This is another research, you know, by something on cardiovascular resolution. This is in health. Let's see this from health. You download here, and then you can view the data management plan. At least you have an idea of how it looks like, right? Remember, it's the software that will guide you through. You just type in some of these things. Now, see the documentation and metadata that I was referring to. The title of the work is very important. Then the creator, that is your name or whoever is the creator. Then the principal investigator's name, the data manager. Now, notice that the principal investigator and the data manager, they are not the same. Remember, I said that your university librarians in your university library can help guide you on how to write a data management plan for your proposals, for your grant proposals, right? Because research teams are now requiring the service of librarians to be part of their application for grants, simply because of these RDM skills. Now, see here, the principal investigator and the data management manager is different. This person may likely be a librarian, right? Because they believe that the work of data management is the specialty of librarian, and it may be too tedious for the team to concentrate on that. So they prefer to allow librarians to do that, but you can do it by yourself. Now, this is the affiliation, and then you have the project abstract, that description of the project that you're applying for fund for, right? And then there's an ID attached to it. This was last notified June 16. Remember, I said copyright information. Now, see the copyright that is attached to this data management plan, that the above plan creators have agreed that others may use as much of the text of this plan as they would like in their own plans and customize it as necessary. In fact, you do not need to credit the creator. Remember I said copyright and licensing. There are some people that will say you must credit the creator, but they are saying you do not need to credit the creator as the source of the language used, but using any of the plan's text does not imply that the creator endorse or have any relationship to your project or proposal. That's the copyright information, right? So there's no fear. We can use, you can repurpose. Now, this is how a data management plan looks like. How will you collect that data? Remember, it is the funders, let's say European Union or Wellcome Trust, that is asking you that if we give you this $1 million, the data you generate from that research, how will you collect it and how can it be reused, right? And see the response here, that is you that are applying, you apply to get access to this cohort data and you grant access here. Then what type of data will be created? And you can see they are going to create genotype data. This is going to be heavily ethical implications because I don't want anyone to know my genotype, right? So if I'm a participant, ethics will come in here, right? So genotype data, clinical, core question, and all that. Documentation and data quality here, storage and backup, where they will store it, will be stored here, and analysis will be performed in Bianca. Maybe Bianca is the name of the software. Now, see legal and ethics. You see why ethics is at the center of the said data management. Now, legal and ethical aspect. How will you handle your data according to legal requirement in terms of handling personal data, confidentiality, and intellectual property? And you can see their response, that's ethical permission and analysis with the record number from ethic approval, this. That means they have the approval. So if your institution have ethic policy, you have to comply with it. And if it is a national research that you are conducting, then you have to conform to the Nigerian Data Protection Act. And so many, you can take out time to go through. There are a lot of public DMPs. Like I said, I saw one, and then you can create your own if you wish. You only need to sign in. After signing in, then you start your creation. Very easy to use, very easy and very interesting. Yeah. So let's go back quickly, go back to my presentation. I will have to share the slide again. Okay. So I'm back to my presentation. I hope you can see my screen. I'm out of DMP tool. Dr. Sadia, can we see my screen?
Yes, clear.
Yes, go on.
Okay, thank you. All right. So DMP tool, you can take out time to visit DMP tool. Just type DMP online, dcc.ac.uk, to look at the other data management plans. And if you need any help, the library is there to help you. So in conclusion, research data management is an emerging area of responsible research best practices, right? And we want you all to start thinking of how to start seeing your research data in another way. And remember that your data is the new oil, right? Your research data that's coming out of your research is a big thing, is the gold that you need to handle carefully, because you can always monetize it. You can share with the public, people can repurpose, people can reuse, and aside that, you can even contribute to common good. At least let people have access to our data sets that is coming out of Nigeria from Africa, and then we can now train our AI model. AI is everywhere, based on data set that is relevant to our experience, our situation, and our society. That way we can get responses, from systems, from models, from software that will be relevant to our situation, and not from whatever foreign ideas, that is trying to, to force it on us in Africa. Hence, universities and libraries must keep up with their advocacy, just like what the University Library Services, FUT Minna, is doing right now. We need to keep up with their advocacy. We need to train our research community so that they will understand what RDM activity entails and how they can go about it, and to help us achieve a successful implementation of RDM practices on our campuses. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much. Can we have the clap emoji for our awesome doctor, please? Thank you very much, Dr. Abduldayan. The presentation was truly enlightening. For those of us that are just joining us, Dr. Abduldayan took us through the definition of research data management and ethics, its importance, how we can manage our data, the best practices in RDM. She showed us some RDM open tools, and also how to come up with and also how to come up with a data management plan. So at this point, I think we have 15 minutes thereabouts, because I would want us to round up by 11 or say 11:10. Dr. Abduldayan, we had our participants saying thank you. Your presentation was awesome and enlightening. So please, now the floor is open for comments, observations, questions and answers. If you have something to say, can you please raise your hand so that I'll call you? If you don't want to do that, you can ask your question in the chat box. Any question, comments from the participants? Okay, so before we start getting questions from our participants, Dr. Abduldayan, you'll notice that Nigerian repositories don't have research data included, as part of the research output. We have journals, we have conference papers, we have all of the other research outputs, so to say, but research data is not included. How do you, I think you mentioned that at the ending, closing slide, but please, can you just take us through in say 2 minutes, how you think we can change this narrative? Because I know it's not just about managing it. The process of bringing it to the repository is the last end. There's a lot that goes through before that end. How do you think? Just few minutes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Stadia. And you're very right that research data for Nigerian repositories, the few repositories that we have in Nigeria, most of them don't have a data set, research data deposited. Well, my PhD is on research data management, and one of the findings revealed that researchers are reluctant with releasing their data sets, their research data, right? Not that the researchers don't have it. Of course, your research is driven by data anyway, but because they don't want to release it, number one, they are scared that if they drop it in the repository, unauthorized users will have access to it, one. Two, they feel they've spent so much in gathering the data, they've spent a lot of time in generating that data, and then releasing it becomes an issue. And then number three, they still don't believe that copyright, licensing options, copyright, and all other systems to safeguard data sets are available, right? So, and that's why this kind of seminar is very important, to allay their fears. That's gone are the days when people steal of course, people still want to steal your idea, your data set, but there are systems, there are mechanisms that helps to prevent that. And one of them is the copyright statement. Only the part of your data that you want people to have access to will be made open. If you don't want any aspects of your data set to be made public, the library will not make it public. They will store it for you. Even though we are promoting open science and we are encouraging because of the several benefits that we leave it open. But if you don't want it open, you can still at least move it out of your local laptop. Let it come out of your laboratory notebook and keep it in a system that is at least permanent and you can preserve it for future use. And then lastly, interaction with the repository. How to even navigate this repository. Institutional repository is just like a software, you know, where you go to, you click, and then gives you the option of upload. Some researchers still don't know how to upload on repositories. So librarians will still have a lot of work to do in that area. We have to continuously do advocacy training, seminar on how to upload articles and data sets on the repository. I think that way we'll have more content on the repositories. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that way forward, so to say. So we have Halima Tawheed and Abdul Jani. So after Halima, Abdul Jani can ask or make his observation. Halima Tawheed, please unmute yourself and let's hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sadia. Good morning, Dr. Fatima. Once again, thank you for this very wonderful and eye-opening presentation. So Dr. Sadia has asked the first question I wanted to ask. I have two more questions. So based on what she just spoke, or rather your response to her question, can we hope for a seminar where you would teach us how to, properly upload our documents, our publications onto the repository so that at least we can begin to reduce the challenges and the problems that some of us professionals face in, career upwardness? And then the second question I have is concerning research data for especially those of us who are trying to further our, PhD studies. Is it allowed, or this would have to be institutionally based, for you to use secondary data, that's data from someone else, to carry out your PhD research or your master's research? Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Sadia, can I respond?
Please do. Respond, please.
Okay. Okay. The first question, a seminar or a workshop, so a hands-on workshop on how to upload on a repository. Yes, I'm sure the University Library Services is more than willing to do a workshop in that aspect. So I know it's a yes. Yeah, we'll show practically how to upload content on the repository. At least you start that way before you even start generating the data anyway, so that by the time you finish and then you have your data set, you're thinking of where to keep it. It's still the same process of uploading that you follow to also upload your data set. Yes. So the second question, sorry, I didn't get the second question. What's the second question again?
The second question is about using when I say secondary data, like you said, data from another researcher to carry out your own research as a, PhD student, or, someone who is trying to further, because I feel like you said, there are different types of data. There's primary, there's secondary. So research data from another researcher would qualify as secondary data. So yes, would such a data be allowed to, do data analysis and whatnot, even if it's research data from more than one, other person, as long as you're properly citing and following ethics? Yes.
Exactly. Yes. As long as it's properly cited and yes, you can. That's the essence of sharing. Remember Google's slogan, you stand on the shoulder of giants. Yes. So you can always use a secondary research data for your research. Yes. But of course you have to cite and acknowledge clearly that this data is from so person. And just the way you cite article is exactly the same way you cite data. You remember there's an upper reference style for article. There's also a data citation style for data set. So yes, you can use secondary research data, provided you acknowledge that, okay, this data set is from Adetoro 2012, and then you're leveraging it to further support your findings or to even kickstart an area that you're thinking of. So yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abduldayan, for your response. Abdul Jani, please unmute yourself and let's have your question or response.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Sadia.
Good morning. Please
Hello,
go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your question.
Mine is not a question and not a comment. Oh, let me just say, if I want to get this slide, I don't know how can I get it because I was late. I joined you very late. It was toward the end of the presentation that I joined. But I'm interested. I have interest in having the slide of the presentations. Thank you very much.
Dr. Abduldayan will share the slide with us, but the recording will also be uploaded on the FUT Minna Library YouTube page. So you have the complete recording online on the YouTube page. So I don't think you have.
Mashallah. Mashallah, I'm a student of there. I think I will be coming to Minna by next week. I will try and get it when I come back. When I come to Minna, inshallah.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome.
There's a question here from Mr. Imava. So he's asking that, do we have a standardized naming convention for research data files to aid findability and retrieval? Dr. Abduldayan.
Okay. All right. What's the question again?
Okay. A standardized naming convention for research data files to aid findability and retrieval.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, the DCMI is the common metadata schema that is used, and we can also use it to describe our data set. So it is like the GMP Online. I showed you the data sets, like the creator, the name of the creator, the publisher, the whatever. So it's still the same data metadata schema that we can use to describe. And then when you want to upload on your repository, for instance, if you are keeping that data set on the repository, there's some items that will be listed, you know, for you to guide you on what to describe, how to describe the content that you're about to upload. So it's still the common metadata schema that we know. And then whatever platform that you hope to upload your data set, you'll be guided on what to keep. And then if you are keeping it eventually before you bring it out, just know that you need to keep record of location, of time, right? And then of course, the name of the creator. And then if there are copyright issues to it, you need to specify it. And then the licensing option that you wish to be attached to the data set when you're uploading it. Yeah.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Imava. So we have another comment. Question from librarian, and okay, his hand is even up. Would you prefer to speak?
No, please.
Okay. Librarian and humanitarian. Unmute yourself to speak, please.
No, please. Could you read the question, please?
Oh, okay. All right then. Okay, so you're saying, can FUT ensure a repository for all students from undergraduate to postgraduate? Yes, we have a repository, and as of now, our postgraduate students are mandated to upload the final copy of their thesis online. So, but for undergraduate, I think because of what I'll call what's that word? To ensure standard procedures, we have not included undergraduate, but postgraduates are actually now uploading their own research out. For undergraduates, I think there's somebody assigned to do that upload. So there is a repository, and you made the comment about requesting that the National Library have a repository for all researchers. As far as I know, I think the National Library has a repository. You know, there's a national repository. However, because we don't want to be replicating infrastructure, so we have institutions that have repositories. So what I think the National Library can do is to leverage these repositories in our individual institution, you understand, and get the metadata onto the national repository. You'd agree with me that it would be tedious for everyone from all of the institutions to be uploading on a national repository. But since there's a decentralized process, you know, so all we need to ensure is that all of these repositories have a standard metadata schema, you understand, that will make it easy for the National Library to be able to feed on the metadata from these repositories. I think that is the way forward for the National Library. I hope I have answered that one. And then there's another comment from, please hold on, from, not comments, from Molly. He's saying, he or she, I don't know the gender for that. It's a comment, but he's saying that we're making it look like, I prefer that we do not say RDM processes are tedious for researchers to do, and that the librarian would do it for them. It makes it sound like the library is the place, okay, to go when one has tedious process to be done. This is a very critical process in the research landscape of any university and research institution. Therefore, I prefer us to say the processes are skill sets that reside within the library, and therefore researchers are advised or encouraged, right, to, okay, are encouraged to use this skill set by virtue of specific trainings, but they can greatly be encouraged to use the library for that. Okay, I don't know if Dr. Abduldayan got that.
Yes, I agree. Okay. I have responded that I agree with what Molly said, that okay. RDM is a skill set that everyone should have, and that's the essence of this webinar. But we know our situation in this part, that it's an emerging area compared to developed world, or in other parts that it's something that they've been doing normally as part of their research process. But it's a gradual thing for us. So we should also see it as a skill set that we need to learn and imbibe, you know, in while we are conducting our research. And I also want to emphasize that the library will always be there to support RDM services. So if you have any issue with it, you know that the library is there to assist you, you know, when the need arises. But then you should learn to do it by yourself if it's possible. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abduldayan. That's true. It's an emerging area, right? And so where do you go to learn this skill set? The library is there. I think that is the bone of contention here. So we have MJ Men. You can unmute yourself. MJ Men, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you. I want to respond to the last question that talks about discoverability. What is being done to ensure discoverability of research materials online? I heard Dr. Abduldayan already responded to that. I want to add my own voice to it. I did a comparison between 2024 and 2016. So I was doing the graduate research in 2016 and how I was able to source for materials versus how it is now. One thing I discovered now is so back then the references that we had, I noticed that in 7th edition, when you are adding the references, like in Microsoft Word or any other platform that has a template for it, there's a field for DOI, digital object identifier. Now, most resources I'm using for literature review, I realize that they are very, very easy to because most of them, they have that digital object identifier. I think in the world of research now, that DOI is kind of like a game changer because whenever you click it, it just takes you straight to the resource. Most resources with that DOI are the ones that are in the open access domain. And from what I have experienced recently, I can say without missing words that they are really, really helpful in discovering research. In fact, over 80% of what I'm getting is through that DOI. So if if you go to doi.com and then you enter any digital object file for any resource, it will just fetch it for you directly. I think is a game changer. Also on platforms like ResearchGate, whenever I see a resource that I want to review on ResearchGate, in addition to letting you view the abstract and letting you download it, that if it is open access, they curate what we call citation. There's a button you hit citation and they'll let you download the citation. When you open it in a notepad, you just see everything is there. The author or author's name, the way it is arranged, the digital object identifier, everything is just there for you to just pick it and drop it in the boxes for whatever it is you are citing on Microsoft Word, and then in a split second you are done. I think that's also a game changer. So that DOI and the fact that recent research materials are taking the time to provide citation for prospective users. I've seen that in the academia, although it was on request. Somebody read a paper I posted and the message and say, please, I need your citation. And then I remember on ResearchGate, authors, I don't know if it is authors or the platform that does it, but I just know that whenever I get a resource link from Google that takes me to ResearchGate to download, I'll see a place where I can download the citation. So I don't need to start looking what is the volume, what issue, what year, what author, how many author, everything is just there for you. I think that's about the size of my contribution. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Okay,
Yeah,
please
thank
go ahead.
you.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, MJ Men. Yeah, digital object identifier is the game changer, like you rightly said. DOI is what a persistent identifier. And it ensures that it's assigned to documents like digital objects on the internet. And there are other persistent identifiers, like your OCID, for instance, that identifies researcher, and then like the ROI that identifies institutions, and then DOI is for content, on the internet. And it ensures that whatever document that's with a DOI is persistently available. Persistence means that it can resolve the name across machines, across algorithms, across websites, across whatever system that is calling it, compared to what we have on our repositories. Sometimes you try to download something, today it is available, and then tomorrow is not available, So, but DOI ensures that persistency. And I know that university libraries, that all know, I think is a call for them. I think they are working on getting a pool of DOIs that would be assigned to content on repository. I'm sure I am aware of University of Lagos repository. They have the content on their repository have a DOI, assigned to it. So if you are picking content from the repository of Unilag, for instance, that content comes with a DOI, just like your articles. And then anywhere you want to, whenever you call it, you always find that particular article. And I'm sure that Dr. Sadia this is an area that she's, we are always clamoring on, that the need for content on the repository, including research data, to have a persistent identifier like DOI. So Dr. Sadia, I think you should speak more on that, right?
Thank you. You've said basically, but just to add to it, I quite agree with what you said. We have issues of interoperability, usability, friendliness of our repository, which is open infrastructure. So these are issues that are coming up, based on this awareness of opening our research up. You want us to open our research up, you want us to open our research data, but how open is our infrastructure? How interoperable are the infrastructure to facilitate this? So matters are rising when we are looking at it generally, and we're in touch with ONU, like Dr. Abduldayan said, and these are issues we'll be raising with them and with universities management generally on why it is important to have our infrastructure interoperable and open, like especially with the use of digital object identifier. I think the challenge has always been that research journal articles, some journal articles have DOI from last digital object identifier from their publishers. And so maybe some repositories are thinking they don't need it. But then we have also our indigenous research output, the ones from our local journals, our thesis and dissertations, our research data. What happens to all of those? They don't have digital object identifier. And that's why it seemed like, although we're churning out lots and lots of research output, but looks like they're not discoverable or findable. So thank you for that observation, MJ, and your comment. Thank you. Ridwan Adam, I think he's the last person we'll take so that we'll be able to end this. Please, can you unmute yourself and let's hear you, please. Rilwano Adamu. Is he here?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Saidia, and good morning, Dr. Fatih. Mine is not a question, but rather I want Dr. Fatih to share more light on regarding the research data management, particularly for librarians working in the library, more especially for those institutions that don't have institutional repository or functional institutional repository. So I don't know, Dr. Fatih, I don't know, do we have some other open repositories where librarians can refer their users to, beside the ResearchGate and other, what do you call it, and ResearchGate and other, sorry, the Google Scholar, sorry, it's Google Scholar. Yes, beside those ones, yes. Do we have other open repositories where librarians can refer their users to? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ridwan Adamu. Ridwan Adamu is doing his PhD in RDM, Minna, yes, and the question on whether there are other repositories that we can direct our users to, yes, there are public data repositories. There are public data repositories. For instance, the Mendeley data, where I deposited my PhD research data myself. It's public, and then people can use it, right? And then we have Elsevier also have their data repository. And then there's Zenodo. Zenodo too is a very good outlet. It not only keeps your data, it also helps you to publish as well, your data set. Even Figshare, for those of us, GitHub, Figshare, for those of us that are into coding, coding generates software codes. They are usually very heavy. Some of them can run into terabytes, including those that are in the health research area. They churn out lots of data, that could be very heavy, even too heavy for institutional repositories sometimes to handle, right? So you can deposit such in, say, GitHub, Figshare, Mendeley data. Elsevier have their public data repositories as well. Dataverse by University of Edinburgh. Dataverse also have their own. In fact, some institutions in developed countries, they have repositories for articles and other content, and a dedicated repository for their research data. That is because some data, like I said, could run into terabyte, right? So I think it's a wake-up call for institutions, and your institution as well, really one. Right. That we need to encourage university management and the library, that the need for a repository, because sometimes, there's no free lunch anywhere. When you deposit such data set in a public data repository, then if anything happens to it, I'm not saying something will happen to it, there's a little, you may not be able to claim, because they're offering you the service free of charge. But when it is in your institutional repository, you have a kind of a certain level of ownership and assurance and everything. But nonetheless, if your librarians, if your researchers are asking for data repositories and you don't have an institutional repository at the moment, you could leverage public data repositories like I mentioned earlier. Remember, that skill is what we should imbibe in them. We should teach them the skill, RDM skills. Let them have that skill, so that they will know that their data is now the new oil and they should not handle it anyhow. Thank you very much, everyone, for the question. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Isa, he has his hand up.
Good morning, everyone. Though I came in late. Towards the ending that Dr. Abduldayan was talking about uploading of data content on Mendeley.
and then reposition. I would like to know if it's possible to arrange a practical class on uploading of this content so that we know what aspect we are supposed to be uploading on these platforms. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm sure the University Library Service, Dr. Sadia and the team would definitely organize another workshop to show practically how to upload and importantly, what exactly to upload. Yes. So including uploading on the repository, on a public data repository, or even how to write a data management plan. Yeah. So, Dr. Sadia?
Definitely. Matters are rising. We see that there's a need. We see this yearning from participants on how to upload and what exactly to upload. And we'll be looking to have another training. And we hope that Dr. Abduldayan will oblige us when we call on her to come and practically show us how we'll do all of this. So at this point, I want to thank everyone that have been here with us since 9:30. Some of us have been here since long before 9:30, in fact, for staying up until the end of this call. It just shows us that we really want to know about RDM, the new emerging trends in the research ecosystem. Thank you so much. And we hope to have other series based on matters arising on this. And we hope that when we call you, you'll be here to learn. Thank you so much. Dr. Abduldayan, if you have anything to say, and so we'll call it a wrap.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sadia, for this opportunity. And I want to also say here that we have a group, we call ourselves the Open Science Advocates in Nigeria, and the RDM Research Assessment Diamond Open Access Publishing is the core of advocacy. And you should expect more of this kind of impactful presentations and presentations that would hope that will open our eye to adopt openness in whatever we do, starting with proper management of our research data, because we can now see that RDM is the core of open science, and it is what is properly kept with integrity that we all wish and want to share and contribute to open science. So thank you, Dr. Sophia. Dr. Sophia is part of the group, RDM Advocacy Group, including Dr. Sadia. Thank you, Dr. Sophia, for staying with us from beginning to the end. I can see Dr. Irene Adetimiri, Professor Irene Adetimiri. Thank you. I can see a lot of others, even from outside Nigeria. Thank you so much. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.